Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics. If you like this type of content, please consider subscribing to the channel or becoming a patron at patreon.com/Afterlife Topics. Hello everybody, welcome to Afterlife Topics Metaphysics. This is Cyrus. So it's been about a week since I had my last video up talking about major changes that are going to happen, that were going to happen that day. And I just want to let you guys know that, yeah, there were some changes. It's just that they were not immediately on the surface. Because what is happening is that there is a shift of the same kind spoken about by Dolores Cannon, Allison Coe, and all these people. It's moving along right now in a very sudden and amazing and dramatic way, which I would have never predicted. So we're going to look into that now in this video and basically just parse out exactly what's happened. Because it's confusing, because a lot of people are like, hey, I didn't experience anything. There was no dramatic change. And that's how I felt because I've been flippin' skeptical this whole time. I, of course, am clairaudient and telepathic, kind of the same thing. I've been able to interface with a lot of very important people. And in this video, we're going to talk about some of those people as well and what they're saying is happening on the planet, so that we arrive at the end goal, which is that this planet is the same kind of planet you'll find in the astral cosmos, where we can essentially meet with deceased loved ones who can just come right down or communicate with us electronically, whatever the case might be, and actually physically reunite with people. That is what is in the works. And I'm told that this is a process and big things happened last week on the 21st of September. Let's break those down and look at some crazy UFO videos as well. So let's go ahead and jump into the presentation. The shift, what is going on? As I just said, the basics is our world is changing so we can adapt to what we call the astral cosmos, because the purpose of Earth in a way is coming to a close as this kind of contrast experience planet. Major changes. So September 21st, I was told to expect huge changes at a certain time. I felt nothing. Okay. September 21st in the evening, told something big had happened and to look at the sky. So I did, and I noticed that just things did seem different in the night sky, and I was completely skeptical. I was like, what is going on? What is this silliness? September 22nd, early morning, told by spirit team a major cosmological change had happened, and still I'm telling my spirit team, okay, I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not going to put my reputation on afterlife topics on the line by saying things like, oh, the stars in the night sky look different. That's a pretty big thing to report. September 22nd, midday, I had this absolutely unreal feeling, and I was told that I was basically feeling this kind of magical connection to source energy. I was instructed to go places, including just a freaking shopping mall, and I felt this energy in the air, which is unexplainable. Now, I would describe it as being magical. It was kind of dreamlike almost, and yet it was not. And I was told how to feel it by just pausing for a moment and connecting to the air around me, feeling that energy come into my body. I could feel it come in by simply pausing and then sort of feeling the atmosphere. And you can't do this if your mind is scrambled with stress and stuff. You can't quiet your mind for even 10 seconds. By doing that, I immediately felt that there was something going on. September 22nd in the evening, told to go out to public place. I went to the University of Arizona campus and to expect to see weird things. September 22nd, ridiculous amounts of UFOs. These are some of the videos. I saw many more, and I've continued to see them as things have gone along. Wait until you guys get a load of this. And let me make sure that the volume is down, because I'm actually remaking this video because the volume wasn't down the first time and it was very flippin' loud. So this is the U of A campus that night. No one was aware of this because, let's face it, it's a bunch of Greek life people going to a sports game. No one is looking up. And as one of the members of my team said, it seems like no one is even looking at the sky anymore, because that is how we can see what is happening and who is visiting us. So now if you look at the night sky, you will see basically a star right here and another star here. There's some other stars right here and here. Actually, I believe this is a planet. And so what's going on? Well, I was instructed to look at this part of the sky and wait. And let's go ahead and look. Oops, that's not a star at all. In fact, it's moving. It's a little object moving that was pretending to be a star until I began looking at it. And now suddenly it's revealing itself as not a star, as some kind of a ship. So let's look one more time. Again, it was stationary until I began filming, and then suddenly it was not stationary anymore. And there it goes. Right. So that's the first video. Let's look at a second one of a similar vein. Again, same situation. I'm looking around, taking video. And right here, what you wouldn't see in the video is that it began moving before the video began playing. Before it looked like this is a planet or a star, and then suddenly there was one here as well. And basically, as soon as I began filming it, it began moving around. And this is not high in the atmosphere. This was like some kind of a probe, and it was disguising itself as a star. I have no idea how, because look at this. Now it's moving around, it's flipping out, and off it goes. I'm like, where the heck did this thing go? It's moving around, flipping out, and it's gone. So that one's fun. Now let's get into even weirder territories. So something we've heard a lot about in the past is that UFOs disguise themselves as jets and airplanes. A group purposefully made themselves appear as a ridiculous looking airplane. Okay, a completely ridiculous looking airplane that wouldn't really exist, because this is like a B-52 bomber that I swear this thing was like the size of a football field or bigger. And it went right over and barely made any sound. Well, it made like a basic airplane sound. I saw 3 of these things go over, and it was completely bizarre. And all the students were like, "Durr. If you hear somebody outside starting an engine, I should have closed my window." Anyway, let's continue. So first thing to notice in this video is, what's this thing? Here is another probe. Here is the fake, like whatever this is. Here's the probe, and the little green light shoots off because it was watching me take the video. Now here is an enormous plane, and yeah, you'd have to be there to understand how ridiculous this thing was. And then what happens next? Oh, another probe comes by, or another ship that I'm told was tagging behind it, and this belonged to the same species. So let's take a quick look. What the heck is that? That's this thing that's tagging behind it. This thing is watching me take the video. And then there's this thing. So that's about it. Let's take a look again. This thing's flying around. Take a quick look on it. And we can actually see a little bit of the shape of this thing. I'm not sure which group or which species this was, but this was a big night. I'm told actually that there was stuff happening in the skies all over the place. Now the next video, there's much less to see here, except there's a weird light up ahead. This is actually me driving in my car. Why am I driving in my car? Well, as you can see, this light just kind of disappears. That was part of it. I filmed it too late. But here I am in my Toyota Corolla, going out into the desert. Why? Because after all this was done that night, I was told that I could have a visitation experience with a particular group of people known as the Mystarans. The Mystarans were going to meet me. But they were posing in a helicopter, and indeed there was a weird-looking helicopter off to my left, and it landed somewhere out, we're out in the freaking Marana area in Arizona. This is like 2 o'clock in the morning. It landed in a kind of like field, and I could kind of see it dropping down there, and like that's weird. And I was told that there were actually the civilization known as the Mystarans, and they would come out to meet me, and they look human. and it would be okay. And I'm like, all right, sure. So I even packed some stuff, before I left. Like, oh, I want them to try out some Reese's peanut butter cups, whatever. Packed some stuff. Went out, was given this information, driving around late at night. Took a hike out in the darkness, fully expecting this to happen, and it did not happen. And why did it not happen? Because of integration issues. What integration issues? Well, those integration issues, let's see if we talk about this in the next slide. Let's just talk about it here. This is the major problem with the shift. The problem with the shift is that our subconscious collective is not ready to experience wondrous and amazing things. It's very rare that a group or an ET group or a spirit group or spirit beings can come down and interact with us because we have this subconscious system around us, like a net, that doesn't allow these things to happen because we do not accept wondrous things. The subconscious collective needs to begin allowing more and more miracles to happen, or else we experience this intense anxiety in the presence of wondrous things, which to them are not wondrous, but to us they are wondrous. The only way for the shift to continue, and this is going off of the last bullet point basically, I'm a little bit out of order, the only way for the shift to continue is for people to begin accepting these things as real. And this is why ETs disguise themselves as airplanes, because they're trying to integrate our consciousness. Now, I thought I was completely ready to meet a couple of, let's say, very beautiful women from an organization, or I should say a civilization within an organization that is trying to help integrate our planet. And so basically, I was ready to meet them. Well, I was actually not ready to meet them because I was, in a sense, not as integrated as I thought I would, to the point where if I did go out there and I saw them coming out of like a helicopter, I would be so stunned and flipped out that basically I would possibly even have a heart attack. That's how we are way less prepared than we think we are because of the subliminal subconscious mind. So WTF is happening in the sky. I'm still having trouble with this one. According to Archangel Minerva herself, I'll get more into her later, the shift did happen on the 21st of September, but many did not notice. If you look up right now, you'll see major celestial weirdness, which I'll get into soon. So the constellations not in alignment, star positions have changed, and the stars are much more faint, barely noticeable in some places, and why. Again, we'll get more into that, but this is part of the shift, and it's part of basically showing people how we can proceed forward to essentially integrate our world to become just like the other side. And that's what this is all about. And the funny thing is that my contacts on my spirit team kind of jokingly refer to this as a stupidity test, even though it doesn't mean we're stupid. What it does mean is that there's an incredible subconscious barrier in our collective consciousness, whereupon, let us say, we are extremely adverse to wondrous things. We cannot be part of the quote-unquote afterlife. We cannot begin having deceased people materializing or just straight up coming down to us or taking a ship down to see us, unless perhaps, well, we can actually experience wondrous things without having panic attacks or heart attacks or things like that. So in essence, these types of things must be accepted by the population, or else integration will be very slow, because you might think that you can deal with a deceased person knocking on your door, but there's a pretty darn good chance that you cannot. In fact, I know you cannot, because we think that stuff is something we can handle, but when you pass away and you go into, well, we are integrating to become part of the other side as we speak, but the way it has been is that you transition into the other side and you have to integrate usually in this kind of sleep state. And as a result of that, you learn to adapt to things like colors, like aura, and colors that don't exist on this spectrum. You also learn to adapt to wondrous things happening. Well, we all can't necessarily go into a coma for 2 weeks, However, what we can do is basically slowly adapt our society to be able to handle it. That is kind of how the shift works, and unless people work on this themselves, and unless people watching this video take a proactive step to make this happen, then we will not be able to experience these wondrous things, because the collective subconscious has to change. If the collective subconscious doesn't change, then we all stay rigid. And if it's rigid, then they cannot meet us, because they'll know if they meet us, we'll all begin to die of heart attacks, panic attacks, strokes, or our very souls will just disperse out of our bodies because we cannot handle it. So now you guys know exactly what the heck is going on with the shift. And I don't even know if this was covered, because I never even fully read The Convoluted Universe. I'm just going by what my spirit team tells me, and it makes logical effing sense. So let's go into some of the photos. So when we talk about basically constellations and things looking different, then what we're basically referring to is how, well, things have changed in the night sky on purpose. And they've changed on purpose because this is a wondrous thing that people can very easily rationalize away, like every person seems to be doing who I've been pointing this out to. Now, I sometimes point this out to people when I'm walking by, like if I'm at the U of A campus and all of that, like, you know, you were seeing earlier in the UFO videos, and people do kind of flip out and they go straight back to their old lives after I point out, like, hey, this isn't normal. And they're like, that's not normal. Oh my God, I'm going to just use cognitive dissonance and then pretend it's not there. This is all by design. However, the main design is for people to actually begin flipping out. Isn't that funny? People were concerned that people will flip out as the shift happens, and right now the concern is more that people will not flip out, because people need to recognize what's happening. So this is a 6-second exposure, minimal light pollution, minimal moonlight, 10 p.m. at night, and there absolutely would be stars all over the flipping place if things hadn't changed, if the stars hadn't become more dim. So exactly like they said, I looked up and I noticed this. Now let's look at the constellations changing. And again, this is the really, really funny thing, because you can look up now, and do you remember, does anyone here watch the stars anymore? On the left is the constellation Orion, and you can see how, well, how it's shaped, how the bow is facing upward, and how the 3 stars, which is the belt or the sword, however you want to put it, is down below there. And as a result of this, you will see on the right hand side how that's changed. I should say the contrast between these two pictures. Now, do you notice any differences between Orion on the left and Orion on the right? Okay, good. So, do you notice anything? Because people I've spoken to do notice these things, and they're too, let's say, frightened, or whatever the case may be, to notice it, or rather to acknowledge it, because those of us who do look at the night sky know that this has nothing to do with the axis of the planet changing, because people, the rotational axis of Earth doesn't change the actual flipping positions of stars in a constellation. The Big Dipper and Orion have always looked like Orion, even if they're in different places in the sky. So basically what I'm trying to say is that, look at this. On the left side is the actually very nice geometric shape of Orion's bow, and that's one of the reasons these constellations attracted so much attention. That may even relate, I don't know, a little bit to the truth behind Roman mythology and Greek mythology, and how a lot of those beings represented in those traditions, such as, I don't know, the goddess Minerva, are actually real people. So we'll get to more of that in a moment. So I think it's very apt that what's being changed appears to be the constellations. And if you wonder how that's possible, just do keep in mind that the shift involves working with ancient creator species, ancient creator spirits, whatever you want to call it, so that it can be something you can wrap your mind around. But yes, wondrous things do happen in life, as I've been trying to flip and tell people for a long time. So, on the left is Orion as we knew it, on the right is Orion as we know it now, and it is all flippin' weird looking. It's no longer a perfect symmetrical constellation like in the bow. And on the right side, we can see how Orion's belt, Orion's sword, whatever is there. And notice it looks a little bit different now. Do I even have to explain why it's different? So yes, go out in the night sky anytime you want, look at the picture on the left and compare it to this picture right here, and just do it, and then rationalize it away in the YouTube comments, please, because I'm very curious, because guess what? I'd be happy if this stuff could get debunked, because I've been wrestling with it for a week with my own spirit team, telling them that they've got to be full of crap, this can't be really happening, and it's just the same old constellation, and I'm looking at it from a different angle. Okay. Next, there are also atmospheric anomalies people have been posting on the group, like rainbows that appear out of nowhere when there's no rain. And then people were saying, oh, it's just sunspots, because rainbows can appear even if it's a sunny day and there's no water in the atmosphere. Well, do you know how rainbows form? Basically, there has to be atmospheric conditions that are correct, where there's little droplets of water. You can make a rainbow in your yard by using a sprinkler, using a hose, and then you spray it in the right direction, and then light refracts or whatever, you create a rainbow, right? Then rain happens and the same thing happens. So what happens when a rainbow appears in the sky and there is no rain, there's there's no water in the atmosphere? Then you get these types of things happening. And why is it happening? Because we were talking about essentially higher level beings who can do this type of thing to show people that miraculous things do occur. It's not just in our imaginations, that it's flippin' K for a miraculous thing to occur, because somehow we became completely brainwashed into extreme left brain thinking that actually rejects things that are magical, as if it's wrong for magical things to occur. I don't understand it, and now I understand a little bit how my spirit team feels about this. Let's continue. So let's look at the next set of major changes. So September 25th, basically people began experiencing telepathy for the first time. So with telepathy, what's going on is, well, this is how people communicate on the other side. Telepathy basically is mind-to-mind interaction. So I began communicating telepathy with people living here on Earth for the first time. And on the right, we see Karina Johor. So she is part of this community, and I actually telepathically communicated with her on Facebook and completely verified what she told me, which was, holy moly, it worked. And then I sent to her, testing to see if you can hear me. And this is her response. Testing to see if you can hear me is word for word. So you made the connection to me and my name, yourself, it looks like. And so I continued by saying, so you heard me say that, that's amazing. I was just chatting to your subconscious. And so I recognized that some of the communication was her subconscious, but some of it was me. And then I actually heard her, vice versa. The point is that this was a one small step for man moment, where we began communicating as people do in the, quote, afterlife. Because what's happening is this world is synchronizing into being the afterlife. So I began communicating telepathically with people living here on Earth for the first time, and now more in my group are also talking to guides telepathically and my own guides telepathically, people on my own spirit team, as those of us on the inside, those of us who have more of a life than to cause hell in the comments and hell on the Facebook group, to try to constantly debunk instead of have a conversation about what's happening, because a conversation can be had. And I want to mention there was somebody in the group who basically said I was a flat earther for mentioning all this, and that is part of the flippin' problem. So do we want a wondrous new world where we can communicate with our loved ones or not? Well, that's up to you guys, because this is a test for all of you, and let's see if we can pass the test. Let's talk about accidental interfacing. So something else crazy happened because basically those in charge of the shift, like the goddess Minerva from Ashtar High Command, are debugging the system, because when you think about it, life is a bit like a computer. At least the way reality functions and operates on that sort of subliminal level that we are not consciously aware of. And something happened where people began scrolling Facebook feeds and actually connecting with people's guides or even themselves, even without realizing it, not knowing how it was happening. Imagine scrolling a Facebook wall, and every time you look at each paragraph, it's like, hello, who's this? Can you hear me? What? Hello, who's this? Because it was basically turned up too far or too fast or something. I have no flipping clue, but it began happening to me and others like Karina, and there's somebody named Michelle from the group who saw my post and connected with my subconscious and heard me respond back very distinctly, who is this? So as I mentioned in the post above, I was told by my spirit team that they were fixing the system and it shouldn't be a problem anymore. Now it's not. So people were connecting without even realizing it, and for the last couple of days, sensitives were like hearing voices and all kinds of weird stuff was happening all over the world. So guides informed me that this was a bug to work out during the shift. On September 25th, people started telepathically connecting to people, their guides, or their subconscious minds. Again, just to reiterate, by looking at people on Facebook, talking to them, seeing their images. And I have to put this joke in at the end. Boy, that must have been awkward for people looking at certain types of images featuring certain people's faces for certain activities. That must have been very awkward, because wouldn't that kind of be weird if you connected to someone's guide or actually themselves during a particular moment like that? So the point is that this was a thing that happened for like a day. And then my team informed me that we were all going to be taken out of our bodies for a split second, and this would be fixed. We'd be put back in. And that happened, and the bug was fixed, and now this was not happening anymore. So let's talk about some of the guides and move into sort of the last parts of this video. So talk about some of the people in charge of the shift that, well, I don't think anyone has known about this yet. So I have friends, again, from the community telepathically connected to my guides, and one of the guides with whom is in charge of a lot is Dahlia. And Dahlia can be found on Google by typing in Goddess Dahlia, and she's very pervasive in Lithuanian mythology. But in ancient Roman times, she had representations too. I don't even know what they are. Apparently, my guide telling me as I make this video is that she was also known as Pisces. But anyway, whether it's Dahlia or Pisces, that is what she looks like. That is an actual channeled image of her. And yes, she really is that pretty. And she is also one of my primary guides during this whole saga. And she communicates with people in the community, like my friend Debbie Booth, who I've interviewed on this channel before, and she communicates telepathically and clairaudiently, as she basically is helping us understand the shift, what's going on, how it's happening, how it works, and how we can get through it by essentially recognizing these wondrous things and then coming together and accepting wondrous things en masse. Because that is what we flippin' have to do. The easiest way to do it is to look at the night sky and basically stop embarrassing yourself and the collective subconscious by denying what's right in front of you. So let's go to kind of a closing slide, as I want to talk a little bit more about some of these guides and how it can be that we're interacting with actual goddesses. Let's talk about the Archangel Minerva and Minerva's barrier. Has anybody ever wondered what the near astral plane is when you go out of your body? How come you're in this weird netherworld, dreamscape, and you have to basically get out of there with a tunnel and light to cross into a world that is connected in such a way that we can experience it when we die, which is actually the rest of the entire flippin' universe. So what's going on here is that this was a setup by the groups who created the universe that, well, the universe that we used to be in. And that is the old universe. For that's why the night sky looks so different. And I'll just leave it at that. So basically, Minerva's barrier. This was a way, it still is a way, because that still is in effect just like before. It is basically kind of like a decoy system that looks exactly like the entire planet Earth that you recognize. However, if a bad guy tries to bother us, a vulnerable population that does not believe in wondrous things, that would have a heart attack if an ET actually did land, even if they were dressed in plain clothes, people would not be able to accept it and they'd go crazy. So how do you protect a vulnerable population like that? You create a decoy mimic universe all around it, in that, let's say a bad guy tries to come and get you and they get stuck in that decoy. And within that decoy, within this kind of blockade, people tend to, let's say, get caught up in their fantasies, because it's kind of like a dream world, right? If you've ever gone out of body like me, you'll be there and it's weird, and you can, things appear with your thought, and there's like sometimes weird entities hanging around there, and it looks just like the world you're in now, but just like a Patrick Swayze film, you can just put your hand through things. This is not a natural environment, it's a product of our planet to protect us, so that things trying to get after us will be hanging around that particular dimension, and they don't know how to get at us. And that happens constantly. Why would it happen? Because there are bad guys out there, because the afterlife, as it's constantly reported, is about 70% wrong. That is to say, people say when you cross over and you just, I'm sorry, YouTube censors, I almost cursed, that you're just in some flippin', like beautiful, you're in a little orbital light, and it's all tranquil and peaceful and waterfalls, and you can't play badminton because that's a physical activity, and instead you just have to float around in peace and love and light forever and ever and ever. Why have I always known that was BS? Because in real life there are bad guys, and bad guys like to prey on vulnerable worlds to, harass us, abduct us. Well, did you know that most abductions are caused by agreements between those who are being abducted, and rather the abductees and the abductors, based on starseed influence, and also essentially karmic agreements and things like that. But in real life, the reason that we don't see particular ET species that have caused us problems is coming in and taking over is because it's impossible, because that blockade has a karmic barrier around it. So people, entities, and groups with bad karma, they try to enter and pierce through that, and they get stuck into it, and they end up getting caught up in their little dream world fantasies and nonsense. They don't even know how to get out of it sometimes. Oh yeah, that's why ghosts exist. Ghosts are basically people who have passed away, who refuse to move into other worlds within our universe, and as a result of that, they just hang around and linger in that realm, chasing their fantasies. And as a result of that, basically what's going on is that these are people who are stuck in Minerva's barrier. And they refuse to leave by their own freaking accord. And so people come in and try to help them all the time, like, come on, out of your fantasies, come with us. And these are people who refuse to move beyond that. This even happens in war zones, because wars are traumatic. But my spirit team tells me all those ghosts of Gettysburg and all that stuff, they've all been taken care of by now. But this kind of stuff happens. And it's why sometimes people don't reunite with each other. And it's one of many reasons the shift has to happen, because that blockade has to be taken down. So, as I was saying, the near astral plane is a barrier around a universe that Minerva of Ashtar High Command, she's the head of Ashtar High Command, she is the most recognizable face in the astral cosmos. Everyone knows what her face looks like because they're taught it in school, and they say, this is the goddess Minerva, and she is one of the creator goddesses, along with Dahlia. And these are creator goddesses who have created our worlds. And they do deserve our love and respect, even if you don't believe it, or if it somehow clashes with your religion. Although I should point out that the Ashtar are Christians, for Christianity was ceded to us. Okay, with that out of the way, so Minerva also designed astral bodies. The same astral bodies that we pop into when we leave our bodies, like, for example, during a near-death experience. She designed all of it. Everything that makes or made our world so different from the other side. So, in essence, this has to be dismantled. I should actually back up a little bit and talk a little bit more about the astral bodies. You see, what the astral body is it is like an energy system that's connected by a silver cord to our own bodies, pumping it full of essentially all the information about the body we're in now, so that when we die, we immediately have a body that is ours that we can operate in without having to wait for some advanced intelligence to clone a new body. It cannot be dismantled. That is to say, the astral blockade, the Minerva's barrier, cannot be dismantled without wide-scale subconscious collective organization. Subconscious collective beginning to allow more and more miracles is what's needed, according to the Archangel Minerva. So this has always been the main issue with the shift, as I spoke of before, that the subconscious collective must change. Without the subconscious collective changing, then what happens is that basically you might think you are ready to have a magical experience with something that is beyond this realm, as happens all the time in the universe beyond this one Earth protected by Minerva's barrier. That barrier, as well as the subconscious collective psyche that prevents and doesn't allow these things to happen, is what's stopping the shift. The subconscious collective psyche is the thing that would make you have a horrible panic attack if you were to experience something truly, truly, truly supernatural, outstanding, paranormal. And why? Because we are all connected to the greater collective consciousness, even if we don't know it. So you might not like somebody who denies all of this, doesn't believe in it, but you are still affected by that person's energy. Doesn't that suck? Well, that's life. Life isn't always peaches and roses and butterflies, as the New Age aisle likes us to believe, because most of those afterlife experiences, I would say easily half or more, the ones that are completely unrealistic and ridiculous and make us all cringe, are people entering hollow heavens. Little sub-realities where people get to hide from real life. Oh, that's right, the thing I've been complaining about and basically demonstrating to people in my books for a very long time. And as a result of that, that's how I feel. So, I think these are very important points to note. So going forward, well, let's just go back to me for a second. What I can tell you, going forward, what we have to do is begin looking for miracles, looking for things, integrating with them, accepting things, and visualizing us meeting our deceased loved ones, them coming down, seeing us, knocking on our doors, landing in ships, or materializing into our homes, because this is what happens in the normal universe. This is what happens beyond this planet, but we are programmed and brainwashed into believing things that are fantastic not only do not exist, cannot exist, magic is not real, and essentially that is where we're at. And keep watching this channel so we can figure out what's going on and we can allow this shift to happen, because they've done a lot of work and now we have to do a lot of work. That's it. You've been watching Afterlife Topics. This is Cyrus. I'll catch you on the next video.